Thanks for joining me on episode 977 of the Inspired Stewardship Podcast.
I'm Rob Berger, author of Retire Before Mom and Dad. I encourage you to find your own journey to true financial freedom. And one way to be inspired to do that is by listening to this, the Inspired Stewardship Podcast with my friend, Scott Mader.
This passage to me describes a lot about how I feel about my wife. Trust me, my wife is not a shrinking violet. She does not just submit to everything that I say, but at the same time, we're partners in a way where she goes out and does things that she is capable of doing, and she fully supports me in doing the things that I am capable of doing. Welcome, and thank you for joining us on the Inspired Stewardship Podcast. If you truly desire to become the person who God wants you to be, then you must learn to use your time, your talent, and your treasures for your true calling. In the Inspired Stewardship Podcast, you will learn to invest in yourself, invest in others, and develop your influence so that you can impact the world. In today's Spiritual Foundation episode about investing in yourself, I talk with you about Proverbs chapter 31, verses 10 through 31. I talk about why this is not just about, quote, women doing women's work, and I also share why my wife fulfills this for me and is often the voice of God in my life. Proverbs 31, verses 10 through 31 might sound familiar to you. It goes like this. Wife of noble character who can find. She is worth far more than rubies. Her husband has full confidence in her and lacks nothing of value. She brings him good, not harm, all the days of her life. She selects wool and flax and works with eager hands. She is like the merchant ships, bringing her food from afar. She gets up while it is still night. She provides food for her family and portions for her female servants. She considers a field and buys it. Out of her earnings, she plants a vineyard. She sets about her work vigorously. Her arms are strong for her task. She sees that her trading is profitable and her lamp does not go out at night. In her hand, she holds the distaff and grasps the spindle with her fingers. She opens her arms to the poor and extends her hands to the needy. When it snows, she has no fear for her household, for all of them are clothed in scarlet. She makes coverings for her bed. She is clothed in fine linen and purple. Her husband is respected at the city gate, where he takes his seat among the elders of the land. She makes linen garments and sells them, and supplies the merchants with sashes. She is clothed with strength and dignity. She can laugh at the days to come. She speaks with wisdom, and faithful instruction is on her tongue. She watches over the affairs of her household and does not eat the bread of idleness. Her children arise and call her blessed. Her husband also, and he praises her. Many women do noble things, but you surpass them all. Charm is deceptive and beauty is fleeting, but a woman who fears the Lord is to be praised. Honor her for all that her hands have done, and let her work bring her praise at the city gate. At first glance, this proverb has a familiar feeling, but it's also one that can be interpreted a number of different ways. And one lens to be aware of is it starts with kind of this ambiguous question. Is it possible to find a capable or noble wife or woman? And then it turns around and proceeds to actually praise one and highlight one, so that someone obviously could have found one. And if you think about it, there's some inherent patriarchal perspective to this. There's a view of this through the lens of a man looking at a woman that could be looked at, and I think has an interpretation that's valid, of being a little bit almost insultant. The woman here is working hard, and she's working everywhere on everything for everybody from dawn till dusk. Is this feeling and this concern about the misogyny of this passage valid? And I would say it is, but at the same point, the truth is there is patriarchy inherent in this, and there is that lens of looking at it through that male world. But at the same time, if you read this passage, It's interesting that what's being called out as being a capable wife isn't stuff that would generally be looked at as just, quote, the work of a woman or the avenue of a woman, especially at the time that this was written. If you think about it, she's not just doing, quote, in the kitchen scrubbing dishes and biting her tongue. In fact, she's the one kind of taking care of the household, taking care of her husband. Yes, there's domestic duties called out, but she buys property. She considers a field and buys it. She plants a vineyard. She's an entrepreneur. She plans ahead. She's not idle. She dresses for success. She sells goods at a profit. And in fact, her husband is called out as being well known, but it's almost because of her, not in spite of her. Basically, it goes and gives her characteristics that are also called out for some of the mightiest warriors in the Bible as well. This woman that is being called out succeeds in business, succeeds in domestic duties, but she's also caring. She opens her hands to the poor. She reaches out to the needy. She's also speaking with wisdom and teaching kindness. She's not remaining silent. It's a moral as well as physical and earthly sort of wisdom that she has. So within this proverb, in fact, the capable wife looks a lot like woman wisdom, which is also called out in other proverbs. And she is, in fact, representing in some ways this sort of archetype of the wise wisdom out in the universe. And basically, the man here has chosen wisely by surrounding himself with a woman who is capable in this way. Not in an insulting way, but in a partnership way. It's clear that this woman is not submissive and submitting in a passive, the way we think of that word, but rather is partnered with this man in a way. And that is still real. This passage to me describes a lot about how I feel about my wife. Trust me, my wife is not a shrinking violet. She does not just submit to everything that I say, but at the same time, we're partners in a way where she goes out and does things that she is capable of doing, and she fully supports me in doing the things that I am capable of doing. And I support her as well. She often is the person that can speak to me in a way that I can hear, where I will hear in her speaking the voice of God. Meaning not that my wife lords over me and tells me what to do, but she often has a way of seeing clearly when I can't, because she's such a good partner with me. To me, this is what this passage represents. Finding a partner, male or female, who can both be capable on their own as an individual, but also partner fully so that each individual lives their life fully while the third, being the partnership, is also fulfilled. At least that's my interpretation of this proverb. What's yours? Thanks for listening. Thanks so much for listening to the Inspired Stewardship podcast. As a subscriber and listener, we challenge you to not just sit back and passively listen, but act on what you've heard and find a way to live your calling. If you enjoyed this episode, do me a favor. Go over to facebook.com/inspired stewardship and like our Facebook page and mark it that you'd like to get notifications from us so that we can connect with you on Facebook and make sure that we're serving you to the best of our abilities with time and tips there. Until next time, invest your time, your talent, and your treasures. Develop your influence and impact the world.